Welcome to the Everything Podcast. In this episode, I'm recapping Tito, which is a new drama that was released in various countries around the world. Obviously, in the UK, it's available on Channel 4. Written by Russell T Davies, who you might know from Doctor Who, and as well as various other dramas, including Years and Years, It's a Sin, Queer as Folk. I don't think there's any others. I think that's it. There probably are others that I've forgotten. But yeah. So before I get into that, I recorded this episode on Friday the 12th of June, 2026, and obviously we're going back to TV. I go from the finish. We are kind of flipping between the two. It's more 50-50, whereas it normally either tends to be very TV heavy or very Big Finish heavy. You just had a mixture of the two, so yeah, just with shows finishing and me finishing watching them and all of the audios as well, with the Big Finish not doing some news but not an insane amount of news, so yeah, but before I spoil the events of Tiptoe, here's the trailer.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, boss.
So, this morning, I'm locked out of my own house, so I go next door. There's the neighbour's son, fresh out of the shower, dripping.
You know where they get their stuff from? Aruba. I'm not being racist.
Well, a little bit.
Boy next door looking for sex online and lying about his age. His dad's downstairs, the electrician.
But his dad doesn't know he's gay, so do not say anything.
That's enough.
Is there a Mrs. Clive?
This is Leo, my gay neighbour. Oh, if that's not offensive.
Well, it is. So watch it.
I used to walk into a room and just go, ta-da! Now I tiptoe, just in case.
It's like it creeps through the walls.
He's a homosexual man choosing to live 10 feet away from two healthy lads.
So we ought to be seen. What if they see us and they still don't like us? Do you know why I went there? To get away from you!
You go online and every other face is a man in lipstick because you are making it normal for children.
You know what this is? It's a new dark age.
You believe anything online. Why don't you believe me? Get out of my house.
You not touch them.
No!
What have you done to it?
You've killed him, Clive.
That was the trailer for Tiptoe, which is going to be very tricky, I think is the word to describe how I'm going to discuss this show, because of how I've mentioned in previous episodes that I want the podcast to be family friendly, and this Tiptoe is certainly not that. So I am going to do my best to not traumatise everyone, because it is dark. You probably got glimpses of that in the trailer, even if you are listening on audio platforms and just heard it. It's So before I will go episode by episode like I tend to do for the TV recaps, but I'm going to read the synopsis for Tiptoe itself, which reads: tense thriller from Russell T Davies with Alan Cumming and David Morrissey. An ordinary Manchester suburb becomes a minefield of lies and violence when Leo gives neighbour Clive his spare key. So we start off with episode 1. A minor feud starts to escalate when Leo gives his next door neighbour Clive his spare key. This episode, obviously, we meet Leo, played by Alan Cumming, Clive, played by David Morrissey. They've lived next to each other for 14 years. Don't really seem to have bothered anyone until Leo accidentally locks himself out of his house because he's had someone stay with him last night and steals his computer. Tries to chase him, the door closes behind him, asks Clive if he can use his phone to call someone. He's only in a t-shirt and underwear, and then whilst Leo is in Clive's house, Leo meets Clive's Marie's sons, George, who we learn is about 16, and Saul, who's about 25-ish. And then kind of we also meet Stephanie, Leo's best friend, seemingly, and where Leo works. Got a bit of that in the trailer. At Spit and Polish, which is a bar where everyone's welcome, especially including rather LGBTQ people, and that is the point. And I should mention that you throughout the episode you will get this, but Leo is gay and is proud of that, and Clive is homophobic, transphobic, and racist, and probably something else. So we kind of see how that works, and it is uncomfortable to watch. Now, in the UK, it was released at 9 o'clock at night. Now, I did not watch it at 9 o'clock at night. I watched it in the morning when it was light, and I would suggest that you would do that, because it goes to a really dark place. And actually, the first scene of episode 1, we see what happens at the end of episode 5. So it's kind of spoiled, but the story is, how do we get from... Because basically the show takes place across 10 days, so a week and a half. And that goes from what we see at the beginning of episode 1, which is actually the end of episode 5, and the next scene where Leo is locked outside of his house, and we figure out along the way we see what happens. And each episode has a cliffhanger. So this cliffhanger is that Leo's ex-partner has left him for a woman who are now having a child. So he's looking for someone on dating apps, and George actually turns up. So that's the big cliffhanger, is that George is gay, which Clive obviously doesn't know, being or as of yet doesn't know, I should say, because Anyway, we then move on to episode 2 with the synopsis. Leo suspects that someone's been inside his house, and Clive starts working at Leo's bar. So Clive is an electrician, Leo works at a bar, and we see what happens. So I think at the start of episode 2, we get more glimpses about where we're going. That tends to be the first scene of each episode, I think, apart from episode 5, because it's basically the second half of the entire episode is that. We see kind of the few bits, like there's loads of time jumps and here, there and everywhere, which kind of is, sometimes it gets your head around. So we obviously episodes 1 to 5 take place across a week and a half. So in this in this episode, obviously George is now gay, and Leo has learnt this, and doesn't know what to do with it, doesn't know if to tell Clive. I think it's through this episode, I can't remember I think it is this episode, that Clive suggests that Leo has a lockbox thing. I actually have one where I live here, where you enter a code and you get a key, so you can never be locked out. It was here actually before I moved, as you may remember. I moved house a couple of months ago. I mentioned it on the podcast, but so it's a very similar thing to that. But only me and my housemates know the code, not neighbours, and especially not neighbours that kind of have a problem with her identity. I simply wouldn't do that, but. Here, Clive being an electrician, struggling for work, so he gets working at Leo's bar, because he points out that there are several issues with the bar. And how does episode 2 end? Episode 2 ends with George being inside Leo's house in a t-shirt and underwear, with Leo and Clive both witnessing it. And then kind of there wasn't an episode for a week. So episodes 1 and 2 were available one day after each other if you watched it on TV, or straight. There were episodes 1 and 2 were able to binge Sunday the 31st of May, and then on the 7th of June for episodes 3 to 5. So we had a whole week. I think it was slightly less for me because I didn't watch it on the Sunday. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. Then we move on to episode 3 with the synopsis. Clive tells Diane all his secrets, but then his war with Leo escalates as Petros. We meet Diane in this episode, played by Denise Welsh, and we kind of more time jumps and things, and there's a bit of murder, because, spoiler alert, Leo does not survive. He survives through most of the series, and then it gets to halfway through episode 5, which I will touch upon where I can. Something happens, and I think Clive in this clip, because the police have turned up by now, which actually we don't see that in episode 5. We only see it here, and he says it's not a murder, it's an execution. And Clive kind of tells Diane that he didn't cheat on his wife, he made it up, basically. And that's kind of, because his marriage with Diane, Marie doesn't really, they barely speak, or if they speak, they argue, and then the truth comes out as to what George is doing in Leo's house, because he just wanted somewhere safe to be, really. If you've watched the episode, you know what I'm talking about, but I'm skirting the edges, shall we say. And then how does episode 3 end? Episode 3 ends with Clive letting himself into Leo's house. And kind of Clive believes, because Clive believes that Leo is kind of at fault here with George, and kind of he wanted it to happen. So we move on to episode 4, tied with the synopsis. Clive and Leo go face to face on a night of terror, while George embarks on an adventure. So George has met with some of the people that Leo works with, who are slightly older than George is, but obviously a lot younger than Leo is. And they convince him to go out, which actually has disastrous consequences. Which I will get to. But obviously, Leo and Clive Clive threatens Leo multiple times, and he to the point where I think about halfway through, he's about to call the police, and then Clive, I think he does it whilst Clive's actually in the house, and Clive mentions how certain things that he's done would look when he messaged George, or George messaged him and he messaged back and sent voice notes, and some of the things that in the context make sense, but if they were to be taken out wouldn't be as positive. And then George kind of is kind of trying to accept his sexuality and it being normalised with having Clive as a father. Obviously Clive doesn't feel that way, and Clive actually in this episode previously has been, and throughout the season, when he learns, I can't remember which episode it is, that George is gay, that he Leo suggests that Clive try and adjust to that, so he doesn't lose his son. And it ends up with a photo being taken of George that is posted to social media, which then Leo finds out about, and then he tries to get it all sorted, and that's kind of the cliffhanger to episode 4, leading into the finale, is that no one else knows that George is gay, and that kind of, apart from Leo and Stephanie and the people that Leo works with, and went out with him. It's what was I going to say? It ends with Leo kind of basically recapping the first 4 episodes of Tiptoe, believing that that's where everything went wrong, and hopefully it was all over. We then to the finale, episode 5, which has the synopsis: Leo and Clive's war reaches a shocking climax as wrath, betrayal, and violence explode. This is actually the shortest episode of the season, even though it's the finale, and kind of there's time jumps and stuff. So kind of, it's a very strange episode 5, because because of the scene at the start of episode 1, we know where we're going. It's just, how do we get there? And I think it was about 20-25 minutes in, I was like, well, how do we get from what's happening now, where there's a football game and Leo comes over and all of that, to what we end up seeing, and it's kind of one thing because that social media post that someone posted at the end of episode 4, which people are trying to get taken down but are unable to do so because they're unable to contact that person, is it ends up with and we see how we get from the football team and kind of everyone having fun, and then Saul's other job, because he sometimes works with his son, Saul, with his dad, Clive, rather. And then kind of everything turns where I can't remember one thing he said, and then Clive, Leo tries. Clive has an idea of how to punish Leo, basically, which ends up with and then Leo tries to correct him and help him, and Clive doesn't take it the way that Leo meant it, and then kind of Saul is restrained as well. George just doesn't do anything. He was embarrassed, I think. So kind of it's a group of friends that seem to be more Saul's age than Clive's, really. But they have views that I should mention that Saul and George don't, which, to be honest, is a miracle in itself. Bear in mind, with how Clive sits on things, on those things, and then it ends up with them tying Saul being restrained, so he's unable to help Leo because he knows that it's wrong, and that I think was very important to stress. And then they end up kind of killing Leo by strangling him with a post, and that's kind of how we end up at the start of episode 1. That's how it happened, and Z, who's a trans character, and I wouldn't normally mention that, but it's important to the story of her identity, of choosing her new name, which is what ends up being that episode. That was a part of that as well, brought into this, and then and then Stephanie finds Leo and obviously works out very quickly that he's not alive anymore, and screams. And I think that was the only clip that we saw from the finale in that trailer, actually. But we end up with that, and then we then see what would happen. So we see what happens to Leo's memory. So kind of within 18 months, he's if you search his name, what would come up, and it's not the actual truth, and that's the thing. And then we see, we don't see it, but in like true life documentaries. Not that this is kind of based on true events, or kind of similar, or what could happen, really. We see what would happen. So we see that Clive and Rodney get life sentences, that everybody else gets small sentences, like a couple of years, and that George, kind of because of because he's been kind of relying on Leo and Leo's friends to help him adjust to his sexuality, that he ends up going down a bad path with it, and then we end up with then we kind of the only good ending is, well, the good endings are the justice that Clive and Rodney and the others get by being imprisoned. Justice number 1. Justice number 2 is that Saul, who we didn't know up until episode 4-5, really, kind of where he stood on all of this, if he had the same values as his dad or not. But he all he wanted to do was do the right thing, really, and was making money, and that was that cost Leo his life, really. And kind of so Saul was the only one that they kind of go, oh, this is what Saul's life was like, because he runs off basically as soon as Clive says to the people that are restraining him that he can go, when he realised that Leo wasn't alive anymore. It's And then we see that he's got children, or we hear that he's got children and has a good job and all of that. So Saul is kind of the only person out of everyone that's had that actually has a good ending, because the others, rightfully so, are either in prison. Stephanie is obviously heartbroken for the rest of her life because her best friend's dead. So she basically just keeps moving on. Melba, one of other Leo's friends, who kind of in the trailer explains why the show is called Tiptoe, really. In that speech from, I think, episode 1 or 2, that she just gets, I can't remember, so I get confused. We're just going to go get drunk on that day, because obviously they feel like they can't deal with it any other way. But yeah, and I finished watching the finale Monday morning. We're now on Friday, and it took me a couple of days. Like, it was Monday, and I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday night before I went to bed, because obviously I was working or doing stuff, and I was just thinking about it. I was going, wow, that was, yeah. I don't know what it was that made me watch it, because I wouldn't normally watch dramas, but I think because of Russell T Davies and knowing him from Doctor Who. So if you're expecting Russell T Davies Doctor Who, you're not got that. And I hope I haven't traumatised you too much. I've just recapped it the best I can without getting into too graphic detail. But without further ado, let me know what you thought of Tiptoe if you watched it, my recap if you didn't. And without further ado, I will see you in a future episode of the podcast. See you then. Goodbye.